In the cold expanse of the Orion Veil, humanity encountered a race that had mastered physics, energy, and time, but not feeling. They were known as the Ithari, beings of crystalline bodies that resonated with mathematical precision. To them, empathy was noise, compassion a weakness, and emotion an error in logic. When they first observed humans, they saw creatures of chaos, hearts that beat irregularly, breaths that faltered under pressure, voices that trembled with laughter or sorrow. Yet, there was one thing the Ithari could not calculate: the power of the human heartbeat. It began with a single experiment. Scientists aboard the Terran vessel Aurora invited the Ithari to listen, not with ears, but with their resonance chambers, to the rhythm of a human heart. The first Ithari delegate to participate recoiled at the sound. "It is unstable," they declared. But then, something strange happened. The resonance chambers glowed faintly, as if a note long missing from their symphony had returned. Unwittingly, humanity had begun to teach an ancient, unfeeling race what it meant to care. And so, the great experiment began: borrowed heartbeats. The Ithari gathered in vast halls of light, where crystalline walls shimmered like frozen stars. There, humans stood, brave volunteers, placing biosensors upon their chests, allowing the Ithari to tune themselves to the fragile rhythm of a beating heart. At first, the aliens recoiled, unsettled by the irregularities. To them, perfection was symmetry, but the human heart was asymmetry incarnate. And yet, those very irregularities contain stories of courage during fear, of endurance under pain, of love that quickened the pulse. Slowly, the Ithari began to feel echoes of what they had never known. They shuddered when a soldier's heartbeat raced as he recalled a battlefield. They softened when a mother's rhythm steadied as she remembered rocking her child to sleep. The galaxy watched in awe as the most unyielding race began to shift. For the first time in Ithari history, crystalline faces glowed with what could only be described as sorrow when they heard the heartbeat of a widow. Humanity had given them not weapons, not equations, but empathy, and with it, the fragile possibility of peace. Peace, however, is never born without trial. A faction of the Ithari opposed the experiment, declaring it a corruption of purity. They sought to silence the noise of flesh before it spread further. War threatened to erupt. The humans who had offered their heartbeats became targets, seen as carriers of infection. The Aurora found itself surrounded by fleets of crystal warships, their hulls gleaming like knives in starlight. But then, something remarkable happened. The Ithari who had shared in the experiment, those who had listened, stood in defiance of their own kind. And how did they resist? Not with weapons, not with force. They broadcast heartbeats across the void. Millions of Ithari, tuned to the pulse of a single human child, felt something they could not destroy. It was fragile. It was flawed. It was alive. The Ithari drums of war shattered, not in battle, but in resonance. The galaxy fell silent, except for the sound of a borrowed heartbeat echoing through the stars. The conflict ended not with destruction, but with transformation. The Ithari declared a new law: no council, no decision, no treaty would be signed without the presence of a human heartbeat. They called it the Resonant Pact. Every chamber of governance now hummed with the rhythm of life, a reminder that logic without empathy leads only to emptiness. For humanity, it was a quiet triumph. We had been mocked for our fragility, pitied for our short lives. Yet in the pulse of our veins lay a strength no machine, no star, no empire could replicate. Generations later, Ithari children, born of crystal and song, still press their forms against the resident stones, asking their human companions, "Let us hear your stories. Let us feel your heart." And in those simple beats, in that fragile rhythm, the galaxy remembers the lesson only humanity could teach. To live is to feel. To feel is to understand. And to understand is the beginning of peace.